Going live.
You're live.
So are you.
Welcome to the PROF Sales YouTube channel. Look who's joining me today. A stranger.
I'm not a stranger.
Just a stranger to the channel.
Maybe to some people. I don't know.
Oh, I see what you did there. So thanks for joining us today, guys. And we are glad you're here. Obviously, Kaaren is here with me. And how long has it been since you've been on this show? We've done a show together. It's been
a hot second.
Yeah, it's been a couple months probably since April or May.
You think?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You can look back. You can look back, but she's back. She's back for the attack.
I want to start like AC/DC, right? Back in black. So yeah.
You're going to get us demonetized.
Oh. All right.
If you sing too close to them.
You know I'm awfully close to them.
Anyway, this channel is about entrepreneurship, selling on e-commerce platforms, being in business for yourself, and hopefully a place to get tips and tricks and well as some encouragement, but also some real talk about all those subjects I just mentioned and so much more. But we're glad you guys are here today, and welcome.
And let us start by selling a course. No, I'm just kidding. So that's a harken back to the chat that already started before we began.
Yeah.
Yeah. No shill zone here for those of you that already have started talking it up. But I love the title of today's video.
Yeah, and we're seriously hoping here. I'm gonna open up my chat a little bit, the chat window a little bigger here. We're hoping we don't get demonetized or YouTube flags the video because of the title. It was a play on words, which Kaaren convinced me to do. So blame her, YouTube.
So yeah, I'm gonna sell you.
Right.
On the eBay.
That's right.
Hey, you can sell everything else, so why can't you? No. We have to be very clear. We're not going to sell people.
We're not going to sell people today, but we are going to talk about what do you do when you decide to start selling on one of these platforms, and it could be other ones other than eBay or Amazon, and you have a significant other, a spouse, maybe it's even a family member who may or may not understand what you're doing.
Oh, that's like 9 times out of 10. I think that's been the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, how many out there in the sound of my voice, when you started selling on one of these platforms, you were talking to it to, maybe, like we said, someone else in your life who matters to you, and they get this look on their face like, what are you doing again? Why are you doing this? Like they start questioning all these things about it. I have a feeling there's a lot of people out there like that.
Even to this day, when I bring up the fact that we do this, sell the things on the Amazon, people kind of get this look like, what do you mean? It doesn't just magically appear in my mailbox when I order it? You mean there's other people involved? Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of people are stuck in a mindset. When I remember when I told my mom, this was years ago, that I was selling jeans on eBay, and she's like, great, so you went to college so you can sell jeans on eBay.
Professor Jeans.
Yeah, Professor of Jeans. And, her point wasn't without some merit.
Sure.
Right? I mean, anytime you go into a new business venture, anytime you start doing something like this, you have a pretty good chance of failing. However you want to define failure, of, not lasting, not being successful at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean necessarily that you should not do it. It just means that there is a decent likelihood that what you're doing won't work for various reasons. So we want to talk about that today. Like, what do you do when you go to your spouse specifically? That's probably the case for a lot of you who are out there. You maybe are married, or maybe just, a significant other, whoever. And you tell them, well, I want to start selling things online. And what are some reactions, Kaaren? What was your reaction to me when I said that?
Well, I mean, when I first met you, you were already dabbling in eBay, right? So it wasn't a foreign concept.
Yeah.
I think my bigger reaction came when you said that's all you wanted to do. Like full-time, really?
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, is it because you thought this isn't really viable?
Oh, sure.
So let's talk about that one first of all. So what do you do when you say to your husband or wife, I want to sell on eBay, I want to sell on Amazon, and I want to do it full time, we'll say. And they say, how are you going to make any money doing that?
Mm. Well, and you said, and it's not only parents. I think we feel pressure. When we first started talking about the idea for this video, it doesn't only come from your spouse. We just figured that would be a great title because it's easier to sell your spouse. So no, anyway, but it's not, you don't get that pressure only from your significant other, only from your partner. I mean, your friends, your family, and sometimes even unsolicited people you don't even know. We've been out and about and run into people
Right.
at a thrift or at a retail store or something, and they're kind of looking like, if you're scanning something or if you're looking something up, like everybody is judgy, right? So we wanted to talk about, how do you navigate through that? And you started, I know you hate to go backwards, but you said it's pressure where you feel the pressure to fail. And the lemonade maker in me would say, there's also that other side that, pressure to succeed. Like you're not necessarily going to be insecure because you think you're not going to make it. There's a very good chance that based on how you set it up, your goals, your mindset, etc., you're going to do well at it. But you still have the whole idea of your support system sort of being kind of doubty, and I think that doubt comes from misunderstanding.
Right.
People, no matter what your new idea is, people have a hard time wrapping their head or their arms or whatever's around it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit because I already see it starting. We're having a few lighting issues here. Yeah, I mean,
That's better.
you're exactly right that people have all this doubt, and I think on some level, I don't know about you guys watching, but I think on some level, when other people raise their doubts about what you're getting ready to do, it triggers the doubt probably that you have.
Oh, sure.
Inside you, like because if you don't have doubt, I know people say, oh, I'm 100% confident. And I think to myself, I don't know that anyone's ever 100% confident hardly in anything, because we're all a little bit insecure inside on some levels about certain issues, and certain times in our life even we're more insecure than others. But you really see that when you tell someone, hey, I'm going to start doing this new venture. Whatever it is, I'm going to start selling things online for a living. And they start to doubt you. I mean, they hit you with some pretty tough questions, right? Like, well, how are you going to make any money at that? Where are you going to find the stuff to get? How are you going to deal with taxes? How are you going to deal with accounting?
It's my microphone.
It's your microphone. How are you going to figure out what's the best thing to sell? And guess what? Those are all questions you should be asking before they ask you.
Sure.
I mean, you should ask those questions of yourself, right? Because if you don't do that, not only do you not have an answer for them, but more importantly, you don't have an answer for yourself. So I think that a lot of times the doubt is really that other people, project on us is really our own doubts.
Sure, or their own fears, right? The fear of the unknown is where that doubt comes from, because it's, selling online. It's kind of, I know that it's been around for a while, but for some people, again, that's kind of an unknown concept. Right?
Yeah. A lot of people, you tell them you're going to go sell online. You tell your husband or your wife, hey, I'm going to sell online. And they think, so you're going to put a few things up on Craigslist or OfferUp or, Facebook Marketplace or whatever the flavor of the day is for your selling app, which is quite different than saying, I'm going to go sell things full time and build a business out of this. And maybe that's the reason why a lot of people, I think that could be part of the reason why a lot of people struggle with the answer to this question, because you and I were talking about this earlier, Kaaren. It's very easy to say, I'm going to go buy a bunch of stuff. I'm going to go out to a bunch of stores, see a bunch of stuff, look it up online, see what it's selling for, maybe not what it's sold for, but what it's selling for. And I'm going to buy it and I'm going to sell it myself. And they forget all the steps in between and all the steps after, and how to keep repeating that whole process and scaling it to a level that will support them if that's their goal to go full time with this. And I think a lot of people don't really think about all those other steps. They just think they get so involved in the thrill of the hunt, which is, as one of my least favorite terms.
Yeah, or things to do. Like you're not about acquisitions. You're about collecting the monies.
Acquiring Benjamins.
Yeah. I see what you did there. But I can't help but also say that, along our own journey, we've encountered people, like, there also has to be some level, and I'm probably jumping around here, but accountability. Like, how often have we seen the couple where she's all about the thrill of the hunt, and there's this entire room or building or whatever devoted to the stuff, and then not a lot of impetus or effort to get rid of said stuff. So in that instance, you could kind of see why perhaps your partner would not be very supportive of said effort, right?
Yeah. So I think part of the part of the first steps you have to go about, if you're going to go down this road of reselling, even part-time, and you want to tell your spouse about it, like, come up with the plan. Even if it's just very simple, it's, maybe it's as simple as saying, I'm going to go to thrift stores, let's say 3 times a week. I'm going to try to hit, 10 or 12 stores, whatever it is. I'm going to buy things and look to make, we'll say triple my money on my purchase. Now, there's a lot more complexity that goes into it than that, but that's a great place to start, right? You just start somewhere. Now you've got a plan. Now you've got a system for how you're going to do it. You've got when and how much you're going to look to make, where you're going to go. You don't necessarily have what exactly at that point, because it's a little bit of a crapshoot when you're doing things like thrift stores and so on. But at least now you've got a plan also in your own head, and also that you can tell your spouse and say, this is what I'm doing. And, their response after that could be one of a few things. They might just roll their eyes and walk away. That's your typical reaction. Right on cue. But they also might ask you more questions. They might want to drill down into a little bit, but most importantly, like, now you have some answers and accountability to yourself, because you've put on paper, you've committed to this other person that you care about. Hey, this is what I'm doing. Now, that's not going to take away all their fears, right?
Right. Action will help take away that fear. And my reaction to you, pushing back, like, if you were like, what do you mean you're gonna sell? Do what? Would be 2 things. One, I'm all about the challenge. Like, anybody tells me I can't do something,
right,
chances are I'm gonna do it anyway.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. And secondly, there's a lot to learn here. And even though, it's easy to kind of watch the videos and see how everybody else does or doesn't do it, the best thing to do is to just kind of get in and get your feet wet, your hands dirty, and just do it. And so I would be like a challenge for me, like a good thing to do for me would be just to do it, and it's kind of fun selling the things and making the money and all of that. So, you just...
Yeah. And Scott brings up in the chat an interesting point. He says, I have a hard time describing how hard I work selling online. So I tell everyone my sales, but it doesn't reflect how hard I work. That's a great point, Scott. And it reminds me of a conversation we were having a couple hours ago, where we were talking about how when you have a job that is your full-time gig, let's say you go to this job 40 hours a week, just for instance, and they pay you X number of dollars per hour. Maybe you have a salary, doesn't matter. But you kind of learn, most of us at that job, what we need to do to keep our job. I love that line in Office Space about Bob, that'll make them just work hard enough to keep their job. And Peter says to the Bobs. But he's right in that we're going to go there and do just enough so that we don't get fired, so that our employer is, adequately happy with our performance and keeps paying us. And it becomes like on automatic. Like, we don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and it's that level of mediocrity, right? Like, what does it take to get to that point? And then we don't have to get any further.
Right. You get to that level, and I need to go in and be at this level every day. Now, some days you might be here and really crush it, and other days you might be a little below it. But on average, you need to be here. You've kind of figured that out. most of us, and they're going to keep paying you until you either quit, get laid off, get fired for some other reason, work slows down. I mean, there's other reasons you can go, but it's not going to be because you didn't do the job. Mm-hmm. Reselling for a living is nothing like that. Mm-mm. It is, you can't just mail it in every day and expect the money to come rolling in. In fact, to Scott's point, you can go put in the work and the sales might be weeks, months, even a year or two later from that work. Mm-hmm. And if you stop putting in the work, whatever the work is, eventually the sales dwindle down to nothing. Like there's a minimum level you could, I guess, kind of send in or send in things to Amazon FBA or listings on eBay or what have you. But ultimately, you're going to eventually see your sales drop down to virtually nothing if you're not actually doing all the things that it takes to run your business on a consistent basis.
And Adam just corrected, it's thingies, Prof.
Yes, I forgot. All these things from like a year ago or longer, probably a year ago.
Just stop rubbing it in. I'm here now. That's all that matters.
All right, that's the last
one.
Well,
and when we were talking...
Where are you again?
I have my tape gun in my lap here. But we were talking about like when you're young and when, you're fresh out of college and you're raw and you're hungry, and you just rush in to whatever it is you're going to do. You're not necessarily, you don't know what that level of mediocrity is quite yet. So you're just going to go, 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 go. And you're not quite looking at, what comes next. Like what, like when I was right out of college, did I think about career paths or 10 years, 20 years down the line? No, nobody does.
And and that's a good point too, because when you start this reselling gig, it's going to be new, it's going to be different. It is kind of fun and exciting. Okay. And then after a while, you realize there's some drudgery in this too. There's some drudgery when you wake up and it's like you got to go ship a bunch of orders. And maybe you're out of a box or you're out of a container for one. You got to go get one. You're like, oh, this is so ridiculous. That happens. And, or you're dealing with difficult customer service issues, or you're going to 3 stores in a row and you find like nothing, right? You find almost nothing to sell or to buy. All those things can happen and they will happen to you, but you still have to come up with, a plan to implement every day to kind of keep your momentum going. And so when you're talking to your spouse about that, it's probably a good idea to say things along the lines and to go and to do them, obviously, but to say things along the line of, look, I'm going to treat this like I treated my job. I'm going to put in these hours each day and they're going to be spent doing these things that I know I need to do to be successful. And by the way, you have to come up with a plan there, like we mentioned before, that doesn't focus just on one part of it. You can't go source for 40 hours a week and then list for an hour a week. Like that's not going to work.
Nope.
But people try that, and that's how you end up with the infamous death pile.
Oh, there's that word again.
The death pile. Or if you flip it around the other way and you say, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to go source some things and then I'm going to list them all right away. But then you don't source again for a week or two, even though you have the money to do it. Then you end up with your sales starting to drop because you have less and less things listed. They sell through, yada, yada, yada. Like there's all these reasons to treat this, not as a job, but to have a routine around it. And I think your spouse would understand the routine of it probably as well.
Right. And respect the structure and consistency of it as far as your routine goes. And when we talked about when we seriously talked about what we were talking about on this video, this can be lonely. Reselling, like I think everyone has a different approach to just about anything on here. Mm-hmm. But I think everyone would agree that there are times in this line of work or in this line of vocation, avocation, whatever, where it's lonely. And if you don't have the support of either friends or family, peers, here or otherwise, that makes that lonely, and that lack of motivation, that insecurity, all of those negative things that sort of seep their way in, even worse. Like you can be sourcing on your own, and that's one kind of lonely. You can be in a relationship and have your partner not support you, right? That's another kind of lonely. Right. You can be in a relationship where your partner really doesn't take it seriously what you do, and maybe will even give you a sourcing allowance every now and then, right? So you're still doing what you want to do, but it's more like here just to appease you or to kind of just whatever makes you happy, which, that's good on one hand, but we want to be validated and want that affirmation that what we're doing, it's not that it's important, but you know what I mean? Like it's fulfilling us.
Yes.
We're meeting goals. We're doing the things, right?
And that's a great point. And I think that ties in with something I was thinking about while you were talking about that, is this idea that you not only just having a schedule around when you're going to do business and when you're reselling and when you're doing all the things that takes, also having a schedule around the things with your relationship. Because you and I have had that struggle on multiple occasions where I have trouble turning the business off. Like it becomes a 24/7 thing. If you're not actually doing something with it, you're thinking about it, you're strategizing, you're planning the next day, you're planning to do this, you're repricing here. I mean, all these things. And that's the thing, because you're reselling and you're doing this as an entrepreneur. You can do these things whenever you want.
Well,
But the problem with that is that at the moment that she may want to do something, I may be thinking about, I really need to go reprice those those 50 things I just sent in, and that can cause friction between, the two of you as well. And that's not something that necessarily will come up in the initial conversation. Mm-hmm. If you go to your spouse and say, I'm going to start reselling online, they say, oh, great. He will just do that in his spare time, and we will still have our date nights, and we will still have. Well, then all of a sudden he's not, and he's spending all that time, that he was spending with you now on doing business stuff. And that can be a real relationship wrecker. See the face?
Yep. We've talked before about balance. And not
is that a real word? I feel like balance. I feel like balance is a fake thing. I don't think it really exists.
It is a fake thing, because we struggle with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else agree with me though that balance is not a real thing? Like, how do you? Well,
I understand what you're saying.
I don't think balance is a real thing because multitasking is not real. You can't be doing all these things at once. So when you say balance, what you really mean is, well, I'm hyper-focused on one thing or right in one moment. But that's not realistic either. Like, you're thinking about other things. You may not be doing anything, and that gets you distracted from the task at hand, which actually makes it go worse. So you end up never really being in balance per se. It's always a struggle between all these tasks have to happen, these things in my job, in my relationship, with my family, with, things around the home. And balance I guess there are people out there who just literally organize and segment every part of their day. But I doubt many of them exist. And I don't think they can do it for very long. I think balance is like one of those, it sounds good on paper.
Well, and I was just about to say the same thing. It sounds good, but can you really keep all of the plates spinning in the air at the same time, constantly, without stop?
Well, Adam says when you don't have balance, it's a real thing. I'm talking about the physical act of balance, not emotional. So if you fall over because you lose your balance, well, there again, you don't have balance.
Although I've been taking yoga, that's one of the things on my journey right now. And, hey, they say balance, lose your balance, fall more, you'll learn something.
Scott says the majority of people look at selling online as a hobby, and it's hard to convince them otherwise. I think you're right about that, but I think selling online is one of those side hustles that can become a main hustle, the hustle if you want, but it's also very easy to do without it ever becoming those things. And there lies the danger with your spouse, because you may commit to them that, I'm going to do this thing for full time maybe. And then you realize, I don't really have to spend 40 hours a week doing this. I'm not really going to make a full-time income doing this very easily or in a way that makes sense to me. And it ends up becoming a side hustle that you've now labeled as your full-time gig, so to speak, which is why we've talked about diversifying your revenue, period. Not just in reselling, but other ways too.
From the beginning, sure.
Right, because there's going to be times when reselling sucks. There's going to be time.
You got in trouble for saying that once before.
Did I? Well, I'll get in trouble again. There's going to be times when reselling sucks. Now I'm going to get in trouble twice. because it does suck sometimes. Let's be clear. It sucks for lots of reasons. It becomes seasonal. Your listings go crappy. One of the commerce platforms makes major changes that decimates your sales. A major competitor comes on to your listing and starts undercutting your price. Whatever, there are times it's going to suck like that. So you have to be ready for those times. And this goes back to the emotional issue. Like, how do you prepare your spouse for the roller coaster ride this is? Again, the job is show up, punch the time clock, get paid. Do just enough. Like, you know what you need to do to keep the job for the most part, unless you get laid off or fired for some other reason. But in terms of productivity job, most of us figure it out. We know just enough to do without killing ourselves. You don't know that in reselling. You can work your butt off sourcing, prepping, shipping, taking photographs, listing, and your sales are terrible. On the other hand, you can be doing very little and your sales skyrocket. And you're like,
been me lately.
I'm a genius. Right? So it's like, how do you even deal with that emotional roller coaster with your spouse? I mean, you've seen me do that, right?
Yeah, like daily.
What are you gonna say?
We just did the eyebrow bookends. Did you see that? You're learning the eyebrow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So like and I think it says something to what your relationship looks like anyway. Like, you're not gonna, just because you're reselling doesn't mean all of a sudden your spouse is going to have some supportive epiphany and then you've got it all figured out, right?
Right.
You know, like for me, like, what do you do? Like the repricing, like, really? Are we really doing this at 5 a.m? Really? Are we doing this right before we go to sleep? Really?
Sometimes it's when it needs to be done. Needs is a strong word.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that probably goes back to having some sort of schedule around the reselling day.
Sure. Yeah.
At least that part of it. Maybe it's a daily schedule. Maybe it could be hourly. That starts getting, I struggle to make an hourly schedule. We've talked about ways to do things like that in the past. But to be perfectly honest, I struggle with an hourly schedule because some days I have kind of peak energy and these groups of hours, and other days it's a little bit over here and it's creative over here, it's productive over there, and then the next day it's flipped around. So to have that schedule, I don't know. You can only force a round peg into a square hole so many times, or is it the other way around? Square peg in a round hole. Yeah. See, I got my
square peg round hole is the story of our relationship.
This is not rocket surgery. I mixed up my metaphor. See what I did there? I did that on purpose. But I mean, that having that set schedule. And again, like, how do you balance that out with your significant other?
Well, I think actions speak louder than words. I mean, if you're in a spot where, is this supposed to be like a help video? Are we gonna, or just
maybe not.
But like if you're struggling with your person, at some point your actions are just gonna speak louder than anything that you could say back. I think, so just do the things. Sell the things. One of the things I couldn't help but think of when we were speaking earlier, that sometimes people get trapped by is just because you like the thing doesn't mean other people are going to want to buy it. And if that happens, if that becomes, a frequency for you, a pattern for you, then in that case, here you are trying to sell the things that people don't want to buy. And so therefore it becomes really easy for the non-reseller in your life to so it's rinse and repeat, but it's rinse, tweak, repeat. Like there's, and this isn't that kind of video, but there's all sorts of things you can do to do better.
Yes.
Right. We're not anywhere near the same place we were in our relationship, in our business, and any of the things that we were 6.5 years ago. Oh, no, definitely not. It's been that long. It has. Wow. Over half a decade. But I don't even know what that means. No, you make great points. One point I was thinking about while you were saying that is, what do you do? And this is a great question for the chat and people watching afterwards. What do you do when your significant other and you're reselling and you're going along and you come to them and you say,
Look at this. I had my first $100 day. Let's say that's what you say to them. And they say something along the lines of, okay, well, that's good, but you're still not making enough to make ends meet. You're still not doing enough to give yourself, replacing the salary you left. You're still not doing enough to support us. You're still, or some variation of that.
That's not very nice or supportive.
I'm guessing there's somebody out there who's heard something kind of like that.
Do you remember?
It's driving me crazy. Please answer.
Do you remember? Oh, that's funny. Do you remember the first thing I sold on my own on eBay? That moment when it went, cha-ching? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, we were in
happened?
a store.
We were in South Carolina. We were in a
Was
Goodwill.
South Carolina? Okay.
And I was way on one side of the store. You were on the other. And all of a sudden, my phone goes cha-ching for the first time.
I do remember that.
Biggest, coolest, freaking moment of my reselling.
And it was nothing even that big. I'm just kidding. See what I'm doing?
It was a multi-pack of socks, I think, like men's socks or something. No, it was socks. The first thing I ever
sold some socks.
I did, and I kid you not, like I went woohoo! I did the happy dance.
She did.
I ran, phone up in the air, smile on my face, whoop 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 whoop. Right?
I remember that.
So, as people, this is the part where we'll say hi and answer questions and all that. Right. But in that instance, like celebrate the small victory. So if you're dealing with that, you have to find in yourself, like whatever you're doing, like that $100 day, high five, send me a message. I will send you a virtual high five back. Seriously. Like there's all these things, just celebrate the small stuff. So hit it. I can't read it. You read it.
No, you're exactly right. But I mean, you're likely you're going to rent out with your spouse. So there has to be like some internal satisfaction you get from this. If you're only going to seek validation from the people that you love and care about, much less the strangers out there on social media land, which I do not recommend, you're going to be tremendously disappointed. What's the quote I love? If you live by their, what is it? If you
live by their praise, you'll die by their criticism.
Yeah, but it's not praise. But yeah, if you live by their
accolades, whatever.
Yeah. So
thumbs ups is
I mean, if they're validating you, and that's what you're living for, when they criticize you, you're going to die by it because you're putting all your self-worth in other people's hands, and you can't do that. It's a mistake. It's a mistake to even put in your spouse's hands, honestly, because one, it's not really fair to them. They can never necessarily know exactly what you need in a given moment in terms of encouragement or in terms of correction, in terms of, making you feel better, whatever. And two, you need to find a way to do that for yourself because, again, no one is going to be able to give you what you need all the time. So that's important to remember. So if you're going to your spouse and saying, hey, I need you to encourage me to keep doing this, you're already kind of defeated. Like the encouragement's great and it will help. Don't get me wrong, but that's not enough. It's not even sufficient. Like you have to have something inside you that's going to say, hey, I'm going to go do this. Here's what my process is going to look like. Here's my progress. I'm measuring against myself, not other people.
Right. That's important.
And I'm going to give myself this amount of time, this amount of effort, whatever that looks like to you, to see what it looks like and feels like. And then as you get to these milestones, your first sale, your 10th sale, your $10 day, your $100 day, whatever it is, you can take pride in those for a moment, but don't live there for long because more moments are coming and they're going to be, who knows how good or bad they'll be. So, take a moment, have a celebratory drink or whatever, and then move forward.
Well, and it speaks to starting always with your why in all the things we do. Why? And you said it. I mean, if you're doing it so that your wife will pay more attention or your husband will pay more attention to you, probably not the right reason. Maybe you're doing it so you don't have to spend so much time with them. I don't know. But like your why, like why do you do it? So if you're looking for that validation, that's probably not the reason.
Right.
Find some self-satisfaction. Find your own affirming goal to meet. because it's true. We're not always going to get it from the outside. We have to dig deep and find it on the inside. And then, if you can get other people to buy into that, so be it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, a perfect example is, you've been on this tremendous walking spree over the last.
Oh, are we going to talk about me?
Weeks or these past weeks or months. And I'm proud of her for doing that. I know it's good for her. I know she enjoys doing it. It's healthy and all those things. But ultimately, the satisfaction for it comes from within for you, I would imagine, because you're the one going out there putting this. I can't go walk for you. Mm-hmm. I can encourage you, but I can't ultimately make you do it. And she's been able to find, this inner whatever mojo to say, hey, I'm going to go out and do this and commit to this because it's good for me and I know it. And I would imagine that's your driving force more than anything.
Well, and we talk a lot about where we're at as far as life goes, and I think I just finally got tired of not
being tired.
Yeah, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But I made a commitment to myself over the summer. Specifically, it came to be in September when a lot of things in my life changed. That I'm gonna walk the walk, like literally, figuratively, all of the Lees. And I don't if you don't, I can't count on some other people to walk with me.
You may be talking about me.
I might be. And we're in October now, and October's goal is to get 10,000 steps every day, right?
Right.
And I'm getting there, even if it means I walk around. Earlier today I walked in Target for 1.5 miles. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or if it means I come home after a really long day and I don't feel like it, but I don't know. Personally, I just got tired of talking the talk and not following through with it. There's something really satisfying, not to mention the fact that I am healthy AF now and I feel good. I can say that. I won't get in trouble for that.
We're talking about selling people, so why not?
Yeah, I see what you did there. But that, to me, if I don't have that commitment to me, then I'm lost. And that's been a consistency factor. That's a non-negotiable for me. I'm going to walk every day. I'm going to, eat right every day. And I'm also doing, I don't know what you talk about when I'm not around, but I'm also, doing.
It's all right there.
I'm also doing.
Translation, she doesn't watch my videos.
Oh, did you see me today?
One less subscriber.
Oh, did you have a video today? No. So
what you talk about?
We might as well, because it's not like we're going to have a show that says, what's Kaaren up to now? So I am back teaching because I found that, and so reselling for me is a side hustle. For Kaaren, not necessarily the two of us, we still do our things together, but I needed that. I needed to feel like that's my purpose. I need to feel like I'm giving back, making a difference. And I find joy in little people. And that's been that fills my soul. So there you go. That's where I've been for the last 2 months.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, guys, that we could talk about when you're approaching your spouse, or maybe you're dealing with your spouse even later. Maybe you've been doing this reselling gig as a side hustle for a while, and now you want to move into maybe a more full-time role at it. I know everybody out there is at different levels and so on, but I do think that dealing with your significant other is probably one of the most challenging things you have to do. If you're alone, obviously this is a little different because it's friends and family. Friends and family can be, especially family, can be tough too. They can be tough on you because they don't always understand, all the things we've talked about in this video. Mm-hmm. But your spouse is probably the hardest one because their reaction to it is shaped by, lots of different factors. Maybe they were in business themselves at one time. Maybe their parents were somebody close to them. Maybe it went well. Maybe it didn't go so well. Maybe they are just hooked into this 8 to 5 job thing. Who knows?
Or maybe they're having a conversation in their own head about what it's going to look like or what you're capable of, or basing it on something that happened 15 years ago. The mom in me would just say, let's try it. I mean, there's always something to be learned in success, failure, experience, period. So just, and that's always my answer. Like if someone doubts or questions, that Jocko podcast thingy, right? It talks about planting leadership seeds, and you have to kind of let somebody get out there and do it. And the experience in and of itself is going to be beneficial. Whether it succeeds or fails is, other things here, but just, do it and then say something. Are there suggestions from people?
Yeah, we probably missed a few questions. Alex said, give your spouse a formal business plan.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea to do for yourself anyway. And by the way,
Alex.
A formal business plan could be pretty short. It doesn't need to be, 30 pages long. Matter of fact, it probably shouldn't be. If it is, that might be indicative of another problem. But I mean, it can be fairly short and just, it's not a bad idea. Like it gives you somewhere to start from, and you can always go back and revisit and revise as you go along, because you will.
Well, and Jason shared with me a Google Doc again today about a plan, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
because I want her input.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not always gonna go the direction she says, and just like she doesn't ever go the direction.
Well, at least you've come to accept that and expect it, so we're good, right?
But yeah, I mean, for sure. But all joking aside, I do want her input on it, and I often take what she says and mold it into whatever was already there, or sometimes blow it up and start over. That's what that person should be. They're a sounding board, but they're also not necessarily the final decision maker. Like the final decision maker's got to be you, because it's got to be right for you. And hopefully, if it is, it'll be right for the other person too, because you'll be fulfilled in a way that you need to be.
Well, and you have to be able to take not every. You have to be able to take constructive criticism. Like
right.
Just because someone has something to say that's contrary to what you're thinking in that moment,
right,
doesn't necessarily mean it's a knock on you. You need to be able to process feedback. And that happens a lot with us. Like I know we joke about it a lot.
Yeah.
And I will get frustrated as you know what with you. But every single time,
I'm not at all frustrating. I'm very amiable.
So every single time, whether you agree with me or not, I'm still planting a seed. Like I'm challenging you to just think about it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always result in a 180-degree change, but you respect what I have to say.
Absolutely.
And it kind of makes you, and that's a good thing. So feedback, constructive criticism, it's not a bad thing. And that in relationship, that's probably, an important thing to be able to work with.
Yeah, because to be perfectly honest, that other, your significant other has your best interest at heart. At least they should. Mm-hmm. So if they're saying those things, hopefully they're saying them out of love and wanting you to do well. I mean, again, it may or may not be the way you go, but still you ought to take into consideration, I think. Let's see what other comments are out here.
Scroll through some comments. I'll do an unsolicited plug to Yvonne. Straight out of Colorado.
I know, right?
That was my present.
Oh, that's right.
Go visit her, remember?
Yes.
I can't wear this to school necessarily. It looks all bare thuggy.
I'm going to scroll back and just look and see what was here. I don't really
tips.
know. Let's see. Guys, who do you watch other than PROF? No one, I hope. Just kidding. There's at least funny. Probably 2 other people out there that are good. I just say things to see what she'll say. Let's see. Most of these resellers seem like shills to me. Well,
and I said, what did I say? No shill zone here.
That's true. We do ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. We do ask you to like the video and comment too. But that's really about it. Let's see.
Hi to everyone. I don't have my glasses on. I see a purple lily. I see Adam. I see Alex. Who else am I missing?
Cheryl says, good to see you. Cooper the reseller says, interesting title. I know, right?
Oh, hey, is that Cooper?
I don't know. It's Cooper the reseller, it says.
Oh.
Who's Cooper?
I don't know. Maybe he changed his name.
Okay. The Seam Store said, I'm unfortunate. Wes says, I'm unfortunate. My wife has been supportive. She even gave me $500 to have a go at it back in 2010. Still going. Did you pay her back?
It was a gift.
Well,
I've watched Judge
Judy I don't
before.
know. They could have had a contract. Who knows? Probably not. I'm just teasing. Let's see. Scott said a drudgery equals listing 100 jeans in one day. You two are still my heroes no matter what.
We keep joking about whether or not we could do that again, right? It wouldn't be jeans though.
We could absolutely do it again, but
what?
We're gonna restart our eBay store and just put 100 jeans up.
Where are we? What up?
Well, I know. Let's see. There's an opportunity cost for every decision, Alex said, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, there's an opportunity cost. I would say it's a different kind of for not talking to your spouse about what you want to do and fully fleshing this out. Because if you don't do that, at some point, it's going to come to a head. He or she is going to be upset with the amount of time you're spending on it. They're not going to think you're getting results. There's a money issue going on. There's space in the home. All of a sudden you've taken over a whole bedroom, maybe with your eBay crap.
Your thingies.
Yeah. So whatever it is, like there's a real opportunity cost to that too, that you could have had this all off at the pass. And now it's already on way down the road and they feel disrespected maybe, or not in the loop.
Well, and it's really easy for us to say this. In fact, I was just talking with a group on Sunday about reacting to someone and how sometimes it's fight or flight, right? And we can either choose to engage in the moment, or we can choose to shut down. And both could be bad, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
So at some point, and maybe, that speaks more to maturity and evolution of a relationship. But I'm telling you, it's always better if you can just talk about it now than letting it like simmer and get worse. And if there's ill feelings, like you said, about the amount of time you're spending, the space you're taking up, the money you're spending, or the money you're not making, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And with the person that, like your partner, your spouse, your life person, whatever, don't they know you pretty well? I mean, if you're in relationship, an intimate relationship, where don't they know you? And so wouldn't that be a good source to sort of like we do it all the time?
Absolutely.
Like bounce whatever it is off of them. And you can still do that, and they're going to say something you don't want to hear and still go your own way. But at least, you made the effort to include that person. And then maybe that'll help with your reselling also. Like maybe, it's not so foreign to them, because I think it's really easy to criticize something you don't understand. So there are plenty of opportunities to talk with your person about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then they won't feel so out of that loop.
Adam asked, did you start your Amazon job yet? Yes. As some of you know, I took a seasonal Amazon position because I kept running out of capital. That was one reason for Amazon. Like there's a lag time between when you get money in, it sells and comes back out. And that was part of the reason. The other part of the reason was just kind of understand the process a little better, how our items sort of flow through this monster
why they get all
company.
broken. No, I'm just kidding.
I already have some more insight into how things flow through. I also have insight into how well you should package your items.
But that's for another show.
You definitely should, because there's always chances they could get damaged if they're not securely packaged. So keep that in mind. But it's been great. I really don't have any complaints about it. I'm definitely physically not as good a shape as I was 10 years ago, probably. And there's a little physicality to it. But for what the job is, it's really simple, in my opinion, and it pays, fairly well for a part-time gig. I know there's a lot of people out there who have issues with working conditions in Amazon, but or at least we see that in the news sometimes. That has not been my experience. It's been good. The conditions have been good. The people there have been nice. They've been helpful. So I just don't have anything really negative to say, honestly. And they pay you every week, which I kind of like. That's kind of cool. Instead of every 2 weeks. Like, that's very old school, and I actually like that. Amazon should pay out that way to sellers too.
Oh, you should make a suggestion.
I know, right?
Comment.
Let's see. New acronym, RTR, rinse, tweak, repeat. I think you said that.
Oh, I did. Who said that?
Adam said that too.
Adam just doesn't miss much. Adam.
VOT and ASP were other ones he brought
VOT.
up. Value of your time.
That's right. Your VOT. What is your VOT, Adam?
You're over 21. It's okay to wear eyeglasses.
But see, look what happens. Like, besides looking like a librarian, which I don't mind, but don't think, see, look, I'm like all,
You're all just someone wearing glasses is what you are.
No, there's too much glare, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of glare.
The producer's like, you can't wear glasses.
Cheryl says, husband's very supportive. We both sell every day. Me every day, him periodically. Now, that's great when the person sells too, right?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Because then they kind of understand. Although I guess that could be a source of conflict. Sometimes they're like, why aren't you doing it like I do it?
Yeah, let's just agree.
Which you and I have had those little, like, minor disagreements about that. No, they have not. No, I was like, list it however you want. Like, you can get your account shut down. It's not on me. But.
Whatever. And there's a little bit, it's like fun competition too, right?
Yes.
Because I've been selling the thingies on eBay lately.
Yes.
Lots of thingies.
Space in whose home? The Seam Store, Sean or Wes says. Do you go to Goodwill outlets? We have gone to Goodwill outlets many, many times. Mm-hmm. For clothing, for jeans, for books, for shoes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we haven't been to an outlet in a while. Mm-hmm. Because I find for books, they're not great. It's almost like it's the stuff that kind of got pushed out of the stores. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, it's selling here. But it's the stuff that got pushed out of the stores and wasn't selling. So they're not a great selection, at least near me. And we're not really selling clothing these days. So, but outlets, there's nothing wrong with them. I have cautioned in the past, and I still would, in a previous video about don't go crazy selling pre-owned clothing from the bins unless you really have a system in place for the prepping and shipping and photos and listing, because it can take them an enormous amount of time if you're just a one-man or one-woman show.
Well, and we just talked to our new friend Dan about, the amount of time that you spend with books, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're at a thrift or a bookstore or library or whatever, it's like really easy to go boop scan, boop scan, boop scan. But when you're in this big vat of books, right? Yeah. Takes a lot more time. Yeah. And some of the
outlets do it that way. Some have them on shelves.
Yeah.
But others have it just on the big blue tables. And I find that a really inconvenient way to go through books.
Yeah. And they're usually all gunked up. The last time I went to a Bin's was when I took Ben to school. And in Grand Rapids, they had an outlet up there somewhere. Yeah. And we tried really hard. But it was just a mess. It was just a hot mess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, books are something that when they're in a nice, neat, orderly fashion, you can really go through them quickly. When they're not that way, it's like a 10x of time I spend to go through them, like literally picking each one up. And then you got to remember which ones you're at and where you're at. It's just a pain in the butt. I just don't enjoy it at the bins at all. And my bins doesn't really have that many books. They have about as many books as a regular Goodwill. So there's just not a lot of reason to go, to be honest. Alex said, my significant other, Amy, used to sell back in the early days of eBay. We sometimes have differences in strategy, current reselling for him versus the Wild West days when she did it. And it was different back then.
Yeah, it's really.
People would mail you checks before PayPal came on. It's like, here's a check. And all right, let me cash this and make sure it's good. And then you send in the stuff. And it could be like weeks before you got your item. Bounce the light off the ceiling, avoids eyeglass glare. Yeah, we don't have a light on us. It's just natural light from the window. It's and this ridiculous line that's because of a broken slat in the blinds. Have you guys heard of Payability? I haven't used it, but I saw Reezy talking about them. I have. I looked into Payability. I didn't think it was a great deal, nor did I think it was a terrible deal. I thought it was sort of average from what they were proposing and so on. It's a decent interest rate, like decently high, if you kind of go to the full term of the loan. And, that's money that comes out of the bottom line. So I wouldn't necessarily, but I don't feel like I'm an expert enough on it to recommend or say don't, but I have not gone down that route, but I have investigated somewhat. Adam asked if Ben's healed enough to play on rugby.
Oh my gosh, Adam, I should have sent you a message. As of a week ago, last Wednesday, he got his final visit from the doctor, and the toe is 100%. He had his first practice, and it is looking great. So fingers crossed, he's going to play. Hopefully he'll make the depth chart. He'll make the 23-man roster, which is all they travel with from Michigan. So my son Ben plays rugby, and he goes to school far, far away. But there's a chance that he will be selected to play in Clemson in November. And fingers crossed, we are planning, if that happens, for the biggest, bestest rugby tailgating party of all time. Like, I'm super psyched, super stoked. So too bad you're not closer, or I would invite you to come.
Yeah, Adam, so move.
Are you going to be anywhere near Charlotte in November 9th, 2019? There you go.
Cheryl says, I know the Dollar Trees have, I know all Dollar Trees don't have them because it is the case in my area, but I have access to books for $1 brand new and resell for 15 to 30. Yeah. And that's cool, Cheryl. I would just say that selling books new on Amazon has a little risk to it. It's not a huge risk. Textbooks certainly do. But selling even regular books, you can get IP complaints, counterfeit claims from publishers and so on. It's not likely, but it is possible. And then the onus is on you to prove that you bought them with invoices and so on. Receipts usually don't work. That's why I tend to stay away from the new condition. Now, having said that, I've heard stories of people who sell used thrift store books as new all the time and have for years. So your mileage may vary. I just look at it like this. Like, I don't really know what a new book is unless it comes to me straight from a manufacturer, sealed up or in a box. I would argue it's no longer new by Amazon's definition.
Have we ever sold, even when we bought books new and in bulk, like, have we ever sold them as new, or did we sell them as like new?
I have sold a couple SKUs as new that we recently got.
Spiritually speaking,
yes,
right? Okay.
Yeah, because I did know that they were, and I felt strong enough about the receipts that maybe they would work, but maybe they wouldn't. That being said, it's a little risky to do it because of all those reasons. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying just understand there is some potential there for a publisher to get a wild hair and come after you.
Who made that last comment on the bottom? Who is that?
Marrakesh says, Prof, can you make more interview videos? Yes, that would be cool, Marrakesh. I honestly have not been as connected to the reseller community over the last 6 months or so. So I really haven't touched base with a lot of people and kept up with everything they're doing, but I wouldn't mind interviewing a few people.
So Marrakesh, let's talk. So I have been pushing and suggesting that PROF do just that. And there's people right here in this town that we could interview to talk about, what is it? The P's, right? All of the things, yes. Your whys, your process, your products, all of those things.
Right,
and
right.
So yes, he promises you today that he will do that. So it's on the YouTube now. You have to do it.
I just made a promise, so I guess I'm going to have to do it. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Hopefully, we gave you some helpful tips for dealing with
selling your spouse
on this idea. And we'd love to hear from you. So leave us a comment down below if this video post, and consider subscribing to the channel.
Yeah, because we'll do more things together probably, because this was fun.
I know we have this ongoing argument about still doing shows together because we can't coordinate our schedules. So she'll blame me, and it's probably mostly my fault. But but in any case, we appreciate you guys coming out today. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
Let's close like we used to.
What? How did we used to? Oh, okay. All right. So we're gonna go old school here with this closure. Yeah. So all right. So check out the description for all kinds of helpful links and hints and things like that. Just stuff will help in your business. And I guess this is Prof Sales saying.
And just ask Kaaren.
Saying good sales to you.